The phone rang at 3:47 a.m. with a voice Min-jun spent 9 months trying to forget. His ex-wife. The Nigerian woman he'd thrown away in the rain. And the 4 words that shattered everything. You had a daughter. He sat alone in his penthouse office overlooking downtown Chicago, the city lights bleeding through floor-to-ceiling windows like open wounds. The bourbon in his glass had gone warm an hour ago. He hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. The empire he commanded, 23 businesses, 14 legitimate, 9 that existed only in whispers, hummed beneath him like a beast he could no longer control. The phone rang again. Unknown number. Min-jun Choi didn't answer unknown numbers. In his world, anonymity meant danger. It meant someone had bypassed his security, his network, his carefully constructed walls. It meant someone wanted him to know they could reach him. He let it ring. It stopped, then immediately started again. His jaw tightened. The same number. Persistent, deliberate. He answered without speaking. Hello, Min-jun. The voice hit him like a fist to the throat. Soft, steady, achingly familiar. A voice he'd spent 9 months trying to erase from his memory, 9 months trying to convince himself had never mattered. Adaeze, his ex-wife, the woman he'd destroyed. You have 3 seconds to hang up, he said, his voice cold, mechanical. Or I'll make sure you regret ever. You had a daughter. The words landed in the silence like gunshots. Min-jun's hand froze on the glass. His pulse, usually disciplined and controlled, spiked violently. What did you say? Her name is Adaeze, Adaeze continued, her tone unnervingly calm. She was born 4 months ago. She has your eyes, Min-jun. Dark, calculating. Even at 4 months old, she stares at people like she's deciding whether they're useful or disposable. I wonder where she gets that from. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against marble. You're lying. Am I? There was no emotion in her voice, no plea, no desperation, just cold, surgical precision. You threw me out 9 months ago, told your men to make sure I understood I was nothing, that I would always be nothing. Do you remember what you said to me that night, Min-jun? Do you remember the exact words? He did. God help him. He did. You were a mistake, I'm correcting. He'd said it in Korean, so his men would understand. So they would see him erase her in his own language, in the tongue of his power. She'd stood there in the rain outside his estate, her bags soaked, her mascara running, and she hadn't cried. She'd just looked at him with those deep brown eyes, eyes that had once looked at him like he was something more than a monster, and nodded. Then she'd disappeared. He'd made sure of it, frozen her accounts, blacklisted her from every apartment complex, every job, every corner of Chicago where his influence reached. He'd wanted her erased, humiliated, broken. And she had been his. Sources confirmed it. Adaeze Okonkwo, the Nigerian woman who'd somehow slipped past his defenses and married him in a moment of weakness 3 years ago, had vanished into obscurity. Until now. I was pregnant that night, Adaeze said quietly. 10 weeks. I didn't know yet. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to give you the satisfaction of knowing you'd left something of yourself inside me, something you couldn't take back. Min-jun's throat tightened. If you're calling for money, I'm not calling for money. Then what do you want? The pause that followed was suffocating. When Adaeze finally spoke, her voice was different, sharper, laced with something dark and patient, and utterly terrifying. I want you to remember this moment, Min-jun. I want you to remember that I gave you a chance to know her, to be her father, to be something other than the man who destroys everything he touches. Adaeze, you're going to hear from me again, she said. And when you do, you're going to wish you'd answered differently tonight. You're going to wish you'd been a better man. But you won't be, because you're Min-jun Choi, and men like you don't change. Where are you? His voice came out rougher than he intended. Where is she? Goodbye, Min-jun. The line went dead. He stood there, phone pressed to his ear, staring at his reflection in the black glass. His knuckles were white around the device. His chest was tight, his breathing uneven. A daughter. His daughter. Adaeze. The name was perfect, a fusion of Korean and Igbo, just like the woman who'd chosen it. A name that belonged to both worlds and neither. A name that shouldn't exist. Behind him, the door opened. Tai Yang, his second-in-command, stepped inside, his expression carefully neutral. Boss, we have a situation in Bridgeport. The Italians are... Find her. Tai Yang blinked. Sir? Min-jun turned slowly, his face a mask of stone. Adaeze Okonkwo. I want her location within the hour. I want to know where she's been, who she's been with, and how she got this number. Your ex-wife? Tae-young's confusion was evident. I thought we... Now. Tae-young nodded and disappeared. Min-jun returned to the window, his reflection staring back at him like an accusation. A daughter. He'd spent 9 months believing he'd severed every tie to Adaeze. 9 months rebuilding his focus, his control, his empire. 9 months convincing himself that marrying her had been his only mistake, and divorcing her had been the correction. But she'd been carrying his child, and she'd hidden it from him. No, not hidden. Protected. His hand curled into a fist. The city below glittered with oblivious life. People sleeping, working, loving, dying, and none of them knew that in this moment, in this room, something had shifted. A fracture had appeared in Min-jun Choi's carefully constructed world, and Adaeze Okonkwo had put it there. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. It was a photo. A baby girl, small and perfect, wrapped in a yellow blanket covered in tiny sunflowers. Her skin was a warm brown, her hair dark and soft, and her eyes, God, her eyes, were unmistakably his. Sharp, aware, ancient in their knowing. Below the photo, a single line of text. She'll never know your name. I'll make sure of that. Min-jun's chest constricted. For the first time in 9 months, for the first time since he'd watched Adaeze walk away in the rain, he felt something he'd trained himself never to feel. Fear. 3 years earlier, Adaeze Okonkwo had walked into Min-jun's life like a storm he never saw coming. It was at a charity gala in downtown Chicago, one of those glittering events where the wealthy pretended to care about causes they'd never understand. Min-jun had been there for appearances, playing the role of the legitimate businessman, the reformed son of Korean immigrants who'd built an empire through hard work and dedication. The lie tasted like ash in his mouth, but he wore it well. She'd been standing near the bar, her posture radiating a quiet confidence that didn't beg for attention, but commanded it anyway. Her dress was simple, midnight blue, elegant without trying, and her hair was pulled back in a way that revealed the sharp intelligence in her eyes. But it wasn't her beauty that caught him. It was the way she'd looked at him when their eyes met across the room. Like she could see straight through him. Like she knew exactly what he was. "You're Min-jun Choi," she'd said when he approached, her Nigerian accent adding a musical quality to his name. "Owner of Choi Enterprises. Real estate, logistics, consulting." She'd paused on that last word, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Interesting portfolio." "And you are?" He'd kept his tone neutral, his guard up. "Adaeze Okonkwo, immigration attorney. I work with West African communities here in Chicago, helping people navigate the system." She'd extended her hand. "I've heard a lot about you." "I'm sure you have. Most of it probably true." That had surprised him. Most people either feared him or pretended not to know what he really was. She did neither. She simply acknowledged it, filed it away, and moved on. "You don't seem concerned," he'd said. "Should I be?" "Most people are." "I'm not most people, Mr. Choi." She wasn't. Over the next 6 months, Min-jun had found himself drawn to her in ways that defied logic. Adaeze was everything his world wasn't. Honest, purposeful, grounded in something beyond power and control. She worked 14-hour days helping refugees and immigrants, fighting a system that seemed designed to crush people who looked like her. She was good, and he was not. It should have been impossible. His inner circle had warned him. Tae-yang especially, who saw threats in everything and everyone. "She's a liability, boss. She asks too many questions. She sees too much." But Min-jun hadn't cared. For the first time in his life, he'd wanted something that wasn't about strategy or empire building. He'd wanted her. Her laughter, her sharp mind, the way she challenged him without fear, the way she made him feel like he could be something more than the monster his father had raised him to be. They'd married quietly, against everyone's advice. His family and soul had been furious. A Korean Mafia heir marrying a Nigerian woman with no connections, no dowry, no strategic value. Her family in Lagos had been equally horrified, their daughter marrying into a world of violence and shadows. But they'd done it anyway. For 2.5 years it had worked. Somehow, impossibly, it had worked. Adaeze had carved out a space in his life that was separate from the blood and the business. She never asked about his work, never demanded he change. She simply existed beside him. A constant, steady presence that felt like absolution he didn't deserve. He'd loved her. God help him, he'd actually loved her. But love in Min-jun's world was a weakness, and weaknesses got exploited. Now, standing in his office with that photo burning in his mind, Min-jun remembered the beginning of the end. It had started with whispers, rumors that someone in his organization was feeding information to the feds, anonymous tips that had led to 3 raids in 2 months, enough to rattle his network, but not enough to bring it down. Someone close to him was talking. Tae-yang had brought him the evidence on a cold February night, financial records showing wire transfers from one of Min-jun's shell companies to an account that traced back to a federal informant network. And the transfers had been authorized using access codes that only a handful of people had. One of them was Adaeze. It's circumstantial, Tae-yang had said carefully. But the pattern is there. The raid started 2 months after you gave her access to the secondary accounts. Every transfer corresponds with a leak. Min-jun had stared at the documents, his world tilting. She wouldn't. Boss, I know you don't want to believe it, but... She wouldn't. But doubt was poison. Once it entered, it spread. He'd started watching her, monitoring her calls, tracking her movements, analyzing every conversation for signs of betrayal. And the more he looked, the more paranoid he became. She'd been distant lately. Distracted. She'd stopped asking about his day, stopped waiting up for him. She'd started taking calls in the other room, her voice low and guarded. To a man trained to see threats everywhere, it looked like guilt. He'd confronted her on a Thursday night in April, his voice cold and accusatory. "Are you working with the feds?" She'd looked at him like he'd slapped her. "What?" "Someone is feeding them information. The evidence points to you." "Evidence?" Her voice had cracked. "Min-jun, what are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Adaeze. I've given you everything, access, trust, my name, and you're using it to destroy me." "I would never..." She'd reached for him, but he'd pulled away. "Get out!" "Min-jun, please, just listen. Get out!" He'd had her removed that night. His men had packed her belongings, escorted her from the estate, and left her standing in the rain with nowhere to go. He'd frozen her accounts, blacklisted her name, made sure she understood that betraying Min-jun Choi came with consequences, and he'd never looked back. 3 weeks later, Tae-yang had discovered the real leak. A low-level accountant who'd been skimming money and selling information to cover his gambling debts. Not Adaeze. Never Adaeze. Min-jun had killed the man himself. But by then it was too late. Adaeze was gone. His lawyers had processed the divorce with ruthless efficiency. His people had confirmed she'd left Chicago entirely. He'd told himself it was better this way. That she was a distraction he couldn't afford. That loving her had made him weak. He'd almost believed it. Tae-yang returned just after dawn, his expression grim. "We found her." Min-jun looked up from his desk, where he'd been sitting motionless for 3 hours, that photo still glowing on his phone screen. "Where?" "Detroit. She's been there for 8 months, working as a paralegal at a small immigration law firm, living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Greektown." Tae-yang paused. "Boss, there's more. Tell me." "She had the baby at Detroit Receiving Hospital. No complications. She listed no father on the birth certificate, and..." He hesitated. "She's filed paperwork to leave the country, her and the child. They have visas approved for Canada. They're scheduled to cross the border in 72 hours. Min-jun's blood turned to ice. "She's running. She's disappearing. If she gets to Canada, we'll lose jurisdiction. Our reach there is limited. And with a child involved, extradition becomes..." "I know what it becomes." Min-jun stood abruptly. "Get the jet ready. We're going to Detroit." "Boss, is that wise? If she's planning something, then I need to see it coming." He grabbed his jacket, his mind already calculating, strategizing. "She called me for a reason. She sent me that photo for a reason. Adaeze doesn't make empty threats." Tae-yang shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, sir, you destroyed her life. Maybe she just wants you to know what you missed. Maybe this is closure for her." Min-jun thought about the coldness in her voice, the precision of her words, the way she'd said goodbye, like it was a promise, not an ending. "No," he said quietly. "This isn't closure." "Then what is it?" Min-jun looked at the photo one more time, his daughter's ancient eyes staring back at him through the screen. "It's a declaration of war." The flight to Detroit took 90 minutes, but Min-jun felt every second like a blade slowly carving into his chest. He sat in the leather seat of his private jet, staring at nothing, his mind replaying that phone call on an endless loop. "You had a daughter." 4 words that had shattered 9 months of carefully constructed numbness. Tae-yang sat across from him, silent and watchful. He knew better than to speak when Min-jun was like this, locked inside himself, processing, calculating. "Tell me about her life there," Min-jun finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Tae-yang pulled out a tablet, scrolling through surveillance reports. She lives simply, works 60-hour weeks at the law firm, takes the bus everywhere. No car, no social life we can track. The neighbors say she keeps to herself. There's a woman, Mrs. Chen, elderly, lives next door, who watches the baby sometimes when Adaeze has to work late. No men. None that we've identified. Family? Friends from Chicago. No contact with anyone from her old life. It's like she built herself from scratch. Tae-yang looked up. Boss, she's been completely off-grid. No social media, no digital footprint beyond work emails. Someone taught her how to disappear properly. That detail gnawed at Min-jun. Adaeze had been trusting, open, not someone who knew how to vanish. Someone had helped her. Someone with resources and knowledge. The visa situation, Min-jun said. How did she get approved so fast? That's the interesting part. She has a job offer from a refugee advocacy group in Toronto. Full sponsorship, housing assistance, everything. The application moved through the system faster than normal. Tae-yang's eyes narrowed. Someone with influence helped expedite it. Min-jun's jaw tightened. Adaeze was being strategic, methodical. This wasn't a desperate woman running from her past. This was someone executing a plan. What's the address? Tae-yang recited it, and Min-jun committed it to memory. Greektown, a neighborhood he had minimal presence in, far enough from Chicago that his usual networks barely reached. She'd chosen well. They arrived in Detroit just before noon. The city sprawled below them, industrial and scarred, a place where people came to reinvent themselves or disappear entirely. Min-jun had a car waiting. Black, nondescript, windows tinted. He dismissed most of his security detail, keeping only Tae-yang. This wasn't a raid. This wasn't about force. He didn't know what it was yet. The apartment building was a modest brick structure, 5 stories, the kind of place where working people lived quiet lives. Min-jun sat in the car across the street, studying the entrance, the windows, the fire escapes. 3rd floor, corner unit. She's inside, Tae-yang confirmed, checking his phone. Hasn't left all morning. Min-jun's heart hammered against his ribs, an unfamiliar sensation. He'd walked into hostile territory dozens of times, faced down men who wanted him dead, negotiated deals where one wrong word meant war. But this terrified him. I'm going alone, he said. Boss, that's not... alone. Tae-yang fell silent, then nodded reluctantly. Min-jun stepped out of the car, the Detroit cold biting through his coat. He crossed the street, entered the building, climbed the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. When he reached her door, 3C, brass numbers slightly tarnished, he stopped. He could hear something on the other side. Soft music. Nigerian music. The kind Adaeze used to play on Sunday mornings when she cooked. Filling their home with sounds of a place he'd never been, but had learned to love through her. His hand hovered over the door. Then he knocked. The music stopped. Footsteps approached. Light, cautious. The door opened 6 inches, held by a chain lock. And there she was. Adaeze looked different. Thinner, her cheekbones more pronounced. Her hair was natural now, cropped close to her scalp in a style that made her eyes even more striking. She wore simple clothes, jeans and a grey sweater, but she stood like a queen surveying a threat. When she saw him, something flickered in her expression. Not surprise, not fear. Recognition, like she'd been expecting this. Min-jun, she said softly. Not a question, a statement. Let me in. No. The refusal was calm, absolute. Adaeze, we need to talk. We did. Last night. On the phone. Her eyes were hard, unreadable. You've had your warning. Now leave. I want to see her. His voice cracked despite himself. My daughter, I want to see her. Something sharp and painful crossed Adaze's face. She's sleeping. Then I'll wait. No, you'll leave. Or I'll call the police. Min-jun stepped closer to the door, his voice dropping to something raw and desperate. You told me I had a child. You can't just... I can do whatever I want, Min-jun. You made sure of that when you threw me into the street like garbage, when you told your men to make sure I understood I was nothing. Her accent thickened with emotion. You wanted me erased. So I erased myself, and I took your daughter with me. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Behind her, a baby's cry pierced the air, sharp, insistent. Adaeze's expression shifted immediately, a mother's instinct overriding everything else. She glanced over her shoulder, then back at Min-jun, her jaw set. Go, she said, before I make you. But Min-jun had already seen past her, into the small apartment, the modest furniture, the laundry hanging to dry near the window, the baby swing in the corner, where his daughter, was beginning to wail. "Just let me see her," he whispered. "Please." For a moment, something in Adaeze's armor cracked. He saw the exhaustion there, the weight of 9 months carried alone, the sleepless nights, the fear, the constant struggle to survive in a world that had tried to crush her. Then her expression hardened again. "You don't get to walk back into our lives because biology says you can. You don't get to play father after you threw away your chance to be one." She started closing the door. "We're leaving for Canada in 3 days. After that, you'll never find us. Accept it, Min-jun. You've already lost." The door shut in his face. The deadbolt slid home with a sound like finality. Min-jun stood there, his hand pressed flat against the wood. His daughter's cries muffled but audible on the other side. He'd faced down rivals, survived assassination attempts, built an empire through blood and will, but he couldn't get through one door, because on the other side was a woman who'd learned from the best how to be ruthless. She'd learned from him. He returned to the car, his hands shaking. Tae-yang looked at him questioningly. "Boss? She won't let me see her." "We could force—" "No." The word came out sharp, violent. "We do nothing that puts the child at risk." Tae-yang blinked, surprised. In all their years together, he'd never heard Min-jun prioritize anything over control. "Then what do we do?" Min-jun stared up at the third-floor window, where he could just make out Adaeze's silhouette moving past the curtain, rocking the baby in her arms. His daughter, Ji-ada, a name that meant everything good in Igbo and good child in Korean. A name that represented everything he'd destroyed and everything he'd never deserved. "We wait," he said quietly. "We watch, and we find out what she's really planning." Because Adaeze hadn't called him just to inform him of his daughter's existence, she hadn't sent that photo just to twist the knife. She'd called him because she wanted him to know. She wanted him to come. She wanted him here, in Detroit, away from his empire, his security, his power. The question was, why? His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He answered without speaking. "You came." Adaeze's voice was different now, colder, more clinical. "I knew you would. Men like you can't resist what you think belongs to you." "What do you want, Adaeze?" "I want you to watch." Her voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it more terrifying. "I want you to see everything I'm going to take from you. Your empire, your reputation, your legacy. I'm going to dismantle it piece by piece, and you're going to know that your daughter, our daughter, will grow up knowing her father as the monster he really is. Unless—" Min-jun's pulse spiked. "Unless what?" "Unless you give me what I need to disappear completely. $20 million, transferred to an offshore account. New identities for both of us, untraceable, permanent, and a signed confession detailing every illegal operation you run." The demand hit him like a physical blow. "You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Pay me, confess your sins, and we vanish. You'll never see us again, but you'll know we're safe. Or refuse. And I'll make sure your daughter's first words are about the father who destroyed her mother." "You wouldn't?" "I've already started, Min-jun. Check your email. I've sent you something to help you decide." The line went dead. Min-jun opened his email with trembling hands. One new message. No subject line. He clicked it. It was a document. A detailed dossier containing information about his operations. Shipping routes, shell companies, names of corrupt officials on his payroll, locations of warehouses. Information that, in the wrong hands, would dismantle everything. And at the bottom, a single line. "This is draft 1. I have 6 more chapters. How long do you think your empire survives when the feds get the complete version?" Min-jun's vision blurred. Adaeze hadn't just disappeared 9 months ago. She'd been preparing, learning, building a weapon aimed directly at his heart, and she was going to pull the trigger unless he gave her everything. If you enjoyed this so far, do me a small favor. It keeps this story alive. No pressure, just support. If it's hitting the way I hope it does. Min-jun didn't sleep that night. He sat in the penthouse suite of a downtown Detroit hotel, the dossier displayed across 3 laptop screens, each page more damning than the last. Adaeze had documented everything. Transaction records, coded communications, photographs of meetings that were supposed to be invisible, testimony from people who shouldn't have talked. It was comprehensive, professional, deadly. How did she get this? Tae-yang paced behind him, his usual composure fractured. Half of these records are encrypted. Some of this information is compartmentalized. Even I don't have access to all of it. Min-jun's mind worked through the possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. She had help. Someone with inside knowledge. Someone who's been feeding her information for months. A traitor in the organization? Or someone who wanted to hurt me badly enough to arm my ex-wife with ammunition? Min-jun's voice was hollow. The question is, who knew she was pregnant? Who knew she'd have leverage? Tae-yang went still. Boss, you don't think... I don't know what to think anymore. Min-jun closed the laptop with controlled violence. But someone has been playing a longer game than we realized, and Adaeze is either a pawn or a player we underestimated. His phone buzzed. A text from another unknown number. Room 412, Silvercrest Hotel. Come alone, 2 a.m., don't be late. Min-jun checked his watch. It was 1:47 a.m. It's a trap, Tae-yang said immediately. Of course it's a trap. Min-jun stood, reaching for his jacket. But she's holding all the cards. If I don't go, she sends that dossier to the FBI field office. If I do go, I at least get to see what she's really after. Then I'm coming with you. No, she said alone. If I violate that, she escalates. Min-jun checked the gun holstered at his back. A habit, though he knew it was useless here. You couldn't shoot your way out of blackmail. Stay here. Monitor communications. If I'm not back in 2 hours, you know what to do. Tae-yang's expression was grim, but he nodded. The Silvercrest Hotel was a mid-range business hotel, anonymous and forgettable. Min-jun entered through the side entrance, avoiding cameras out of instinct, and took the stairs to the 4th floor. Room 412 was at the end of the hallway. He knocked once. It's open, Adaeze's voice called from inside. Min-jun entered cautiously, his senses on high alert. The room was standard. Queen bed, desk, bathroom, visible through an open door. Adaeze sat in the chair by the window, backlit by the city's amber glow. She'd changed into a black turtleneck and slacks, her posture relaxed, but her eyes sharp. She looked like someone who'd learned to negotiate with predators. Close the door, she said. He did, but remained standing near it. Where's Giada? Safe, with someone I trust. Adaeze gestured to the bed. Sit. We're going to have a conversation, and I need you to actually listen instead of calculating how to overpower me. I'm not here to hurt you. No, you're here because I have something you want. Information about your daughter. Control over your empire's future. The question is, what are you willing to trade for it? Min-jun moved slowly to the bed and sat, maintaining distance between them. You want 20 million and a confession. That's not negotiation. That's extortion. Call it what you want. I call it reparations. Adaeze's voice was steady, matter of fact. You destroyed my life, Min-jun. You took everything from me. My home, my career, my reputation, my sense of safety. You made me homeless while I was carrying your child. I slept in my car for 3 weeks until I could scrape together enough for a bus ticket out of Chicago. The words hit him like stones, each one deliberate and aimed. I didn't know you were pregnant. Would it have mattered? She leaned forward, her eyes boring into him. Be honest, if I told you that night, would you have believed me? Or would you have assumed it was a manipulation? Another lie from the woman you'd already convicted of betrayal? Min-jun opened his mouth, then closed it. Because she was right. He wouldn't have believed her. He'd been so consumed by paranoia, so convinced of her guilt, that anything she said would have sounded like a desperate ploy. I thought you were working with the feds, he said quietly. The evidence was fabricated, or misinterpreted. Or maybe you just wanted an excuse to push me away before I saw too much of who you really are. Adaeze's voice softened, becoming something more painful than anger. I loved you, Min-jun. I loved you, knowing what you were. I never asked you to change. I just asked you to trust me, and you couldn't even give me that. The accusation hung between them, heavy and undeniable. I found the real leak, Min-jun said. 3 weeks after I threw you out. It was Lee Jin-ho, the accountant. He's dead now. I know, I read about it. Suicide, by jumping from the Hancock building. Her tone made it clear she knew it was no suicide. Did killing him make you feel better? Did it erase what you did to me? No. Good. Adaeze stood, moving to the window. Because you need to sit with that guilt. You need to understand that your paranoia, your inability to trust, cost you everything. Your wife, your daughter, your chance at being anything other than a monster. Min-jun's hands clenched into fists. Why am I here, Adaeze? Why the dossier, the threats, the meeting? If you just want money and safety, there are easier ways to get it. This, he gestured between them. This is personal. She turned, and for the first time, he saw the full weight of her rage. It wasn't hot or explosive. It was cold, patient, refined over 9 months of suffering into something diamond hard. You're here because I need you to understand what it feels like to be powerless, she said. To have someone control every aspect of your life, to watch everything you've built teeter on the edge of collapse, and know you can't stop it. This is revenge. This is justice. By threatening to destroy me? By using our daughter as leverage. I'm not using her as leverage. Adaeze's voice sharpened. I'm protecting her from you. The money, the confession, that's not about revenge. That's about ensuring Jada grows up safe, far away from your world. The 20 million goes into a trust for her. The confession goes into a safe deposit box with my lawyer. If anything happens to me or to her, it gets released automatically. Min-jun processed this, his mind working through implications. You're creating a dead man's switch. I'm creating insurance, because men like you don't let go easily. You'll say you understand now. You'll promise to leave us alone. But the moment we drop our guard, you'll come for her. You'll decide she belongs to you, that she's an asset, an heir, something to control. Adaeze's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. I won't let you do to her what your father did to you. The words struck something deep and primal in Min-jun's chest. His father, Park Choi, the man who'd built the organization from nothing and raised Min-jun like a weapon instead of a son, who'd beaten discipline into him, erased softness, taught him that love was weakness, and weakness was death. Min-jun had sworn he'd never become that man, but here he was, threatening the mother of his child, treating his daughter like property to be claimed. I'm not my father, he said, but the words sounded hollow, even to him. Prove it. Adaeze returned to her chair, her posture regal, despite everything. Prove you're capable of putting someone else first. Give me what I'm asking for. Let us go. Choose your daughter's safety over your pride. And if I refuse, then tomorrow morning, the FBI receives the dossier. By evening, your assets are frozen. By next week, your organization is in chaos. Your allies will scatter, your enemies will strike, and everything you've built will crumble. She paused. And Jada will grow up knowing her father valued his empire more than her life. Min-jun stood abruptly, moving to the window beside her. Below, Detroit slept, indifferent to the war being waged in this anonymous hotel room. You've become ruthless, he said softly. I taught you too well. You taught me survival. The ruthlessness was already there. I just had to learn when to use it. Adaeze looked at him, and for a moment he saw a flash of the woman he'd married. I didn't want this, Min-jun. I wanted us to work. I wanted to believe you could be both, the man I loved and the man your world required. But you can't. No one can. So now I'm doing what you should have done 9 months ago. What's that? Choosing our daughter over everything else. The words settled over him like a shroud. You have until tomorrow night, Adaeze said. Transfer the money. Sign the confession. My lawyer will handle the exchange. Once it's done, Jada and I disappear. You'll get quarterly updates, photos, proof she's safe, but no contact, no location, no attempts to find us. You expect me to just walk away from my own daughter. I expect you to love her enough to let her have a life that doesn't include your world. Adaeze moved toward the door, opening it in clear dismissal. You spent 9 months erasing me from your life. Now I'm giving you the chance to do something noble for once. Give us the same gift. Min-jun walked to the door, then stopped beside her. Up close, he could see the exhaustion etched into her face, the weight she carried, the sacrifice she was making to protect a child from her own father. I'm sorry, he whispered. For everything. I know you are, but sorry doesn't change anything. Her hand rested on the door. You have 24 hours. After that, your empire burns, and Jada grows up knowing her father chose power over her. Min-jun stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind him with quiet finality. He stood there for a long moment, his reflection staring back at him from the window across the hall, a man who'd conquered everything except his own demons. His phone buzzed. A message from Tai Yang. Boss, we have a problem. Someone just leaked classified information about the Bridgeport operation to the Chicago Tribune. They're publishing tomorrow morning. We need to move. Now. Min-jun's blood ran cold. The dossier. Adaeze had already started releasing information. She wasn't bluffing. She was already dismantling his empire, piece by piece, showing him exactly how powerless he really was. And he had less than 24 hours to decide, his daughter or everything he'd built. But as he walked back to his hotel, a darker thought crystallized. What if there was a third option? What if he could find whoever was helping Adaeze, cut off her support, force her to negotiate from weakness instead of strength? What if he became the monster she accused him of being, just one more time, to win this war? The thought repulsed him, but it also felt familiar, comfortable, like coming home. Min-jun returned to his suite at 3:42 a.m. to find Tae-yang surrounded by 3 laptops, 2 phones, and the controlled chaos of a man trying to stop a wildfire with his bare hands. The Tribune is running the story at 6 a.m., Tae-yang said, without looking up. Front page, Korean crime syndicate's decades-long grip on Chicago infrastructure. They have names, dates, shell companies. It's detailed enough to trigger federal investigation within hours. Can we stop it? Not without confirming everything they're about to print. We'd have to go scorched earth, threaten lawsuits, intimidate sources, maybe worse. Tae-yang finally looked up, his expression grave. Boss, if we react, we validate. If we don't react, we're exposed. There's no good play here. Min-jun moved to the window, his mind racing through scenarios, each ending in disaster. She's forcing my hand, making me choose between fighting the leak and meeting her demands. We could take her, Tae-yang said quietly. Grab her before the deadline, force her to recall whatever else she's planted. It would be messy, but no. The word came out sharp, absolute. She has contingencies. She's thought this through. If we touch her, everything releases automatically. We'd lose the war, trying to win a battle. Then what do we do? Min-jun turned, his jaw set. We find out who's helping her. She didn't build this alone. Someone with access to our systems, our records, our operations. Someone fed her this information. Find that person, and we cut her supply line. Tae-yang nodded slowly, his fingers already flying across the keyboard. I'll start with the timeline. She left Chicago 9 months ago. The information in that dossier is more recent. Some of it is from last month. Someone's been actively feeding her intelligence. Cross-reference everyone who had access to those specific files. Start with people who knew about my marriage, who might have sympathized with her. That's a short list. Most of the organization thought she was a liability from the start, which means whoever's helping her isn't doing it out of loyalty to Adaeze. They're doing it to hurt me. Min-jun's eyes narrowed. Find them. We have 18 hours. By sunrise, Tae-yang had narrowed the list to 4 names. Min-jun studied the files spread across the hotel room desk, each one representing someone he'd trusted, someone close enough to his operations to be dangerous. Park Ji-woo, Tae-yang said, pointing to the first file. Your cousin. He handles West Coast operations. He's never liked that you married outside Korean families. He called Adaeze the African mistake, behind your back. Min-jun's jaw tightened. Ji-woo was ambitious, hungry for power, and resentful of Min-jun's position. He'd betray me out of racism and opportunity. What's his access level? High enough. He could have pulled most of what's in that dossier, but there are gaps. Financial records he shouldn't have been able to reach. Next. Lee Sung-min, your father's oldest friend. He's been with the organization for 30 years. Tae-yang hesitated. Boss, I know this is difficult, but he's been vocal about his disappointment in your choices. He thinks you've gone soft, that the marriage was a sign of weakness. Min-jun remembered Sung-min's disapproval, the way the old man had looked at Adaeze like she was a stain on the family honor. He has total access. He helped build the systems we use. If anyone could pull this off, it's him. Third, Kim Hae-won. She runs our legal department. She's the one who processed your divorce. Min-jun's head snapped up. Hae-won? She and Adaeze had contact during the marriage. Adaeze consulted her a few times about immigration cases, pro bono work for the communities she served. They developed a rapport. Tae-yang pulled up communication logs. After the divorce, Hae-won made several encrypted calls to an unlisted Detroit number. The timing matches. Hae-won was at my father's funeral, Min-jun said slowly. She knows everything about our family, our structure, our vulnerabilities. If she decided to help Adaeze, she'd be the perfect inside source. And the fourth? Tae-yang's expression shifted to something darker. Me? Min-jun went very still. What? I have to be on the list, boss. I have access to everything. I was there the night you threw Adaeze out. I knew she was devastated. And I'm the one who found the real leak, 3 weeks too late. Tae-yang met his eyes steadily. If you're looking for who had means, motive, and opportunity, I check every box. For a long moment, Min-jun studied his second-in-command, the man who'd stood beside him for 8 years, who'd saved his life twice, who'd been the closest thing to a friend Min-jun allowed himself to have. "Are you?" Min-jun asked quietly. "Are you helping her?" "No. But you should consider the possibility that I'm lying." That's what she'd want. For you to doubt everyone, trust no one, tear your organization apart from the inside while she watches. Taeyang's voice was steady. "It's brilliant, actually. Paranoia as a weapon." Min-jun turned away, his mind spinning. Adaeze had learned from the best. She'd watched him destroy their marriage, through paranoia and suspicion. Now she was using the same poison against him. "Get me eyes on all 4, Min-jun said. "Surveillance, communications, financial transactions. Someone made a mistake. Someone left a trail. And the Tribune story? Let it run. If we fight it, we confirm it. Let our lawyers issue a standard denial. Focus on finding the source." Taeyang nodded and returned to his screens. Min-jun's phone buzzed. Another message from Adaeze. "Did you enjoy your morning reading? This is just chapter 1. TikTok. Min-jun. 16 hours remaining." Below, the text was another photo. Adaeze, awake this time, her dark eyes staring directly at the camera. She was wearing a tiny yellow dress with sunflowers, Adaeze's favorite flower. In the baby's small hand was a stuffed tiger, its black and orange stripes vivid against her brown skin. Min-jun's chest constricted painfully. His daughter, 4 months old and already being used as ammunition in a war she didn't understand. He typed back, "I want to see her, in person. 1 meeting. Then I'll give you what you want." The response came immediately. "No. 5 minutes, supervised, anywhere you choose. I just need to see her once." The pause was longer this time. Then, "Why?" Min-jun stared at the question, his fingers hovering over the screen. Why? Because she was his daughter, and some primal part of him needed to know she was real. Because he'd spent 9 months pretending he didn't care about the woman he'd destroyed, and now that lie had shattered. Because he'd become exactly what his father raised him to be, a man who valued power over people. And maybe, just maybe, holding his daughter for 5 minutes could prove there was something human left inside him. But he couldn't say any of that. So he typed, "Because she deserves to know her father isn't just a monster in her mother's stories." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. "Lafayette Park, noon. Bring Taeyang if you want, but the moment you try anything we're gone, and the dossier releases immediately." "Agreed." Min-jun set down the phone, his hands trembling slightly. "Boss?" Taeyang looked up. "What is it?" "She's letting me see Adaeze, noon today." Taeyang's expression shifted to immediate suspicion. "It's a trap." "Probably, but I'm going anyway." "Then I'm coming with you." "I know." Min-jun grabbed his jacket. "But first we need to find Kim Hae-won. If she's the leak, we have 6 hours to flip her or neutralize her before that meeting." They found Hae-won at her apartment in Chicago's Gold Coast. She'd flown back for meetings. She answered the door in business casual, her expression carefully neutral when she saw Min-jun. "Mr. Choi, I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk." Min-jun pushed past her into the apartment. "About Adaeze." Hae-won's composure cracked for just a fraction of a second, a tell so small most people would miss it. But Min-jun had spent his life reading people. "I don't know what you're referring to," Hae-won said carefully. "Don't insult me." Min-jun turned to face her fully. "You've been in contact with her. You helped her build that dossier. You've been feeding her information about my operations for months." "That's absurd. I would never." "Kim Hae-won." Taeyang stepped forward, holding up his tablet. "We have the phone records, encrypted calls to Detroit, financial transfers to an account that traces back to Adaeze's lawyer. You were sloppy." Hae-won's face went pale. She moved to the window, her back to them, her shoulders tense. "Why?" Min-jun's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You've been with us for 12 years. My father trusted you. I trusted you. Why betray me for her?" When Hae-won turned back, there were tears in her eyes, but also steel. "Because what you did to her was unconscionable," she said, her voice shaking with suppressed emotion. "I watched you fall in love with that woman. I watched her make you better, more human, more merciful. She was good for you, Min-jun. She was good for the organization, and you destroyed her over a lie. I thought she was. I know what you thought. And you were wrong, but you were too proud, too paranoid, too much your father's son to admit it." Hae-won wiped her eyes angrily. When she showed up in Detroit, pregnant and homeless, she called me. She was sleeping in her car, Min-jun. Your wife, your pregnant wife, was sleeping in a car in January because you'd frozen her accounts and blacklisted her everywhere. The words hit Min-jun like physical blows. I didn't know she was pregnant, he whispered. Would it have mattered? Haiwon's question echoed Adaeze's from the night before. You threw her away like trash. You didn't check. You didn't care. You just moved on. So you decided to help her destroy me. I decided to help her survive. The dossier was her idea. She wanted leverage, insurance against you coming after her and the baby. I just provided the information she needed. Haewon's chin lifted. And I'd do it again. Min-jun studied her. This woman who'd sat in his father's meetings, who'd drafted contracts and managed legal exposure, who'd been part of the family's inner circle for over a decade. She'd chosen Adaeze over him, over everything. Does she know? He asked quietly. Does Adaeze know about Jiwoo? Haewon blinked, confused. What about Jiwoo? That he's planning to use this chaos to take over, that while I'm distracted by her and the baby, he's consolidating power, making moves to push me out. Min-jun watched her face carefully. You've given Adaeze a weapon, but Jiwoo is using it for his own purposes. He's the one who leaked to the Tribune. He's escalating the timeline, forcing Adaeze's hand, while simultaneously weakening my position. Haiwon's face went white. No, that wasn't... She wouldn't. She doesn't know, Tae-yang confirmed. She thinks she's controlling the releases. But Jiwoo has been monitoring her communications. He's been feeding information to media outlets she hasn't authorized. He's turning her revenge into his coup. Haewon sank into a chair, her hands shaking. Oh God! Jiada! If Jiwoo takes over, he'll go after them, Min-jun finished. He sees the baby as a threat, a potential rival claim. He'll eliminate them both to consolidate his position. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. Adaeze thought she was waging war against Min-jun, but she'd armed a different enemy entirely. And that enemy wouldn't stop at destroying Min-jun's empire. He'd destroy everything, including a 4-month-old girl who'd never asked to be born into this world. Min-jun pulled out his phone and called Adaeze. She answered on the first ring. It's not noon yet. Cancel the meeting, take Jiada, and run. Right now. Don't pack. Don't hesitate. Just... What are you talking about? Jiwoo knows about her. He's been monitoring your communications. He's using your dossier to stage a coup, and once he's in power, he'll come for you and the baby. You're not safe. You were never safe. There was a long pause. Then Adaeze laughed, a sound so cold and bitter it barely sounded human. Oh, Min-jun, she said softly. You still don't understand, do you? Understand what? I know about Jiwoo. I've known from the beginning. Her voice was steady, calm, absolutely terrifying. Why do you think I started this war? I needed you and Jiwoo to destroy each other. I needed your organization to tear itself apart from the inside, and you both played your parts perfectly. Min-jun's blood turned to ice. What? Jiwoo contacted me 2 months ago, offered me money to help him take you down. I agreed, and then I took everything he gave me and added it to my dossier. Now I have evidence against both of you. 2 crime bosses, documented in exhaustive detail, ready to be delivered to the FBI the moment either of you becomes a threat to my daughter. The room spun. Adaeze hadn't been waging war against Min-jun. She'd been waging war against the entire organization, using Min-jun's paranoia and Jiwoo's ambition to dismantle the empire from within. The meeting at noon, Min-jun said slowly. It's not about letting me see Jiada. No, Adaeze confirmed. It's about making sure you're out in the open when Jiwoo makes his move. He thinks he's using the chaos to ambush you. But I've already tipped off the federal task force about the location. They'll be waiting. You'll both be arrested today, Min-jun. And when you are, my lawyer releases statements showing I cooperated with authorities. I become the brave ex-wife who helped bring down a crime syndicate. And Jiada grows up safe, far away from all of you. The line went dead. Min-jun stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. He'd underestimated her. Completely, catastrophically underestimated her. Adaeze hadn't learned to be ruthless from him. She'd surpassed him. And now, in less than 3 hours, everything he'd built, everything his father built, would collapse. Unless he could find a way to outmaneuver the woman who'd already thought 10 moves ahead. This is where everything you thought you knew shatters, and it's about to get so much worse. Min-jun stood in the center of Haiwon's apartment, the phone still clutched in his hand, the weight of his own stupidity crushing down on him like concrete. Boss! Tae-yang's voice seemed to come from very far away. What did she say? Min-jun looked up, his eyes hollow. She's been playing us both. Me and Ji-woo. The meeting at Lafayette Park. It's a federal trap. They'll arrest us all. Then we don't go. We disappear, regroup, fight back from... There's nowhere to go. Min-jun's voice was flat, dead. She has documentation on everything. If we run, she releases it. If we fight, she releases it. If we go to the meeting, we get arrested. Every option leads to the same ending. Hae-won stood slowly, her face pale. What about Giada? If you're both arrested, what happens to... She wins. Min-jun moved to the window, staring out at Chicago's skyline. The city he'd conquered, controlled, ruled from the shadows. Soon it would all belong to someone else. Adaeze becomes the cooperating witness. The brave ex-wife who helped the FBI. She gets witness protection, a new identity, safety for her and the baby. And we get 20 years in federal prison. There has to be a way out, Tae-yang insisted. We can contact Ji-woo, warn him it's a trap, form a temporary alliance. Ji-woo won't believe me. He thinks I'm the one being played. He thinks he's winning. Min-jun's reflection stared back at him from the glass, a man who'd lost everything without ever seeing the knife coming. And even if he did believe me, we'd still have the same problem. Adaeze has us documented. Every crime, every operation, every body. The moment we step out of line, she buries us. Then we take her, Hae-won's voice was quiet but sharp. Before the meeting, we grab her and the baby, force her to call it off. She has a dead man's switch. Anything happens to her, everything releases automatically. Min-jun turned to face them both. She thought of everything, every contingency, every move, every countermove. She's been planning this for 9 months while we thought she was just surviving. The room fell silent. Outside, Chicago moved through its morning. People going to work, drinking coffee, living ordinary lives. None of them knew that by noon, one of the city's most powerful criminal organizations would cease to exist. Min-jun's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it, already knowing who it was from. You're probably trying to find a way out. There isn't one. I've closed every door, blocked every exit. You taught me that, Min-jun. You taught me to be thorough, to anticipate, to destroy before you can be destroyed. I was an excellent student. Another message followed immediately. But I'm not completely heartless, so I'm giving you a choice. A real one this time. Min-jun's pulse quickened. He typed. What choice? Come to Lafayette Park alone. No Tae-yang, no security, no weapons. Just you. Meet your daughter. Hold her. Look into her eyes and understand what you're losing. Then walk away and turn yourself into the FBI. Confess everything. Cooperate fully. Take full responsibility. And leave Ji-woo out of it. Why? Would I do that? Because if you do, I'll spare Tae-yang, and Hae-won, and everyone else in your organization who was just following orders. I'll make sure the federal case focuses on you and Ji-woo, the bosses, the decision-makers. Everyone else gets immunity in exchange for testimony. You're asking me to sacrifice myself to save them. I'm asking you to finally be the man I thought you were when I married you. The man who could choose something besides power. The man who could love something more than his empire. Min-jun stared at the message, his hands trembling. And if I refuse? Then everyone goes down. Tae-yang, Hae-won, every soldier, every associate, every person who ever worked for you. I'll make sure the FBI has enough evidence to prosecute all of them. Wives, children, families. Everyone connected to you suffers. Your father's legacy becomes a cautionary tale about greed and violence. And Giada grows up knowing her father chose pride over mercy. The phone slipped from Min-jun's fingers, clattering onto the floor. Tae-yang picked it up, read the messages, his expression darkening. Boss, you can't seriously be considering... She's giving me a way to protect you, Min-jun said quietly. All of you. By throwing yourself on a grenade, they'll give you life, minimum. Probably multiple life sentences. Tae-yang moved closer. We've survived worse than this. We can survive her. No, we can't. Min-jun met his eyes. She's better than us, Tae-yang. She learned from the best. And then she became something we never prepared for. Someone who doesn't care about money or power or control. She only cares about one thing. Keeping her daughter safe. And that makes her more dangerous than anyone we've ever faced. Before we go any further, if this story is pulling you in, if you feel connected to these moments, thank you for staying with it. Stories like this are shared for people who feel deeply, just like you. If you'd like to keep discovering stories that cross cultures and touch real emotions, you're always welcome to subscribe. A gentle like helps this story reach someone else who may need it tonight. Now, let's continue. Then let's give her what she wants. The money, the confession, everything. We rebuild from... She doesn't want the money anymore. She never really did. That was a misdirection. Min-jun's voice was hollow. She wants me destroyed. Completely. Utterly. And she wants me to choose it myself. To prove that somewhere inside this monster, there's still a piece of the man who loved her. Haewon stepped forward, her face stricken. Min-jun, I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I was helping her escape, not helping her destroy. You did help her escape. From me. From this world. From everything I represent. Min-jun looked at her. You were right to do it. She deserved better than what I gave her. So what now? Tae-yang's voice was tight, controlled. We just... Surrender? Let her win? Min-jun checked his watch. 10:17 a.m. Less than 2 hours until the meeting. Less than 2 hours to decide whether to sacrifice himself or drag everyone down with him. I need to think, he said. Both of you, leave. Go somewhere public. Stay visible. If this goes wrong, I need you to have alibis. I'm not leaving you, Tae-yang said firmly. That's an order. Then I'm disobeying it. For the first time in hours, Min-jun felt something close to warmth. Loyalty. Real loyalty. Not the kind bought with fear or money. The kind that persisted even when everything was lost. She's watching us, Min-jun said quietly. Right now. She has surveillance on this apartment. On me, on all of us. She knows we're here. She knows we're planning. And she's 10 steps ahead. How can you be sure? Because that's what I would do. Min-jun moved away from the window, suddenly aware of sightlines, cameras, the possibility that every word was being recorded. She learned from me. Which means she thinks like me. Which means... He stopped mid-sentence, his mind racing. She thinks like me. The thought crystallized into something sharp and dangerous. If Adaeze had learned to think like Min-jun, then she'd also inherited his weaknesses. His blind spots, the places where certainty became overconfidence. What is it? Haewon asked. She's made one mistake, Min-jun said slowly. Only one. But it might be enough. What mistake? She still loves me. Tae-yang frowned. Boss, I don't think... Not loves me now, but she loved me once. Deeply. Completely. The kind of love that doesn't just disappear. Even after betrayal. Min-jun's voice gained strength. That's why she's giving me this choice. That's why she wants me at Lafayette Park. Not to arrest me. She could do that remotely. Safely, without risk. She wants me there, because some part of her needs to see if I'll choose differently this time, if I'll choose Giada over the Empire, if I'll prove I'm capable of love. And are you? Haewon's question hung in the air. Min-jun thought about his daughter, 4 months old, innocent, perfect, a combination of everything he was and everything Adaeze represented. Korean and Nigerian, power and grace, violence and hope. She deserved better than him. She deserved better than this world. But she also deserved to know her father tried. I don't know, Min-jun admitted. But I'm going to find out. At 11:30 a.m., Min-jun stood outside Lafayette Park, watching families push strollers, joggers pass by, elderly couples feed pigeons. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in 30 minutes, this peaceful space would become a battlefield. He was alone. He'd sent Tae-yang away with explicit instructions. If this went wrong, to disappear. To take Haewon and anyone else loyal and vanish into the network of safe houses and false identities Min-jun had spent years building. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built an empire on contingency plans and escape routes, and now he was walking into a trap with none of them. His phone buzzed. I see you. Northwest corner, by the fountain. She's waiting. Min-jun followed the directions, his heart hammering. And then he saw her. Adaeze sat on a bench, the baby carrier beside her covered with a light blanket. She wore sunglasses and a simple jacket, her posture relaxed but alert. To anyone passing by, she looked like any other young mother enjoying a spring morning. But Min-jun saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands stayed close to the carrier, the calculated positioning that gave her clear sightlines in all directions. She was ready for anything. He approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. When he was 10 feet away, she spoke. That's close enough. He stopped. No Tae-yang? She asked. You said alone. And you actually listened. Miracles do happen. She removed her sunglasses, and Min-jun saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of 9 months carried alone. Do you know what day it is, Min-jun? He thought back. Saturday. It's April 15th. 1 year ago today, we had our last real conversation, before everything fell apart. Do you remember what we talked about? Min-jun searched his memory. A year ago, spring, before the paranoia consumed everything. We were in the kitchen. You were making a goosey soup. I asked if you were happy. And I said yes. I said I was happier than I'd ever been. Adaeze's voice was soft, painful. I meant it. Despite everything, your world, your violence, your secrets, I was happy. Because I thought we had something real, something that transcended all of it. We did. No, you did. I was just a chapter in your story. Someone you'd eventually erase when you decided I was inconvenient. She reached into the carrier and pulled back the blanket slightly. But I'm not a chapter anymore, I'm the author. And I'm writing the ending. Min-jun moved closer, despite her earlier warning. Close enough to see inside the carrier. Giada slept peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling, her face serene. She had Min-jun's nose, his jawline. But she had Adaeze's warmth, her coloring, her indefinable grace. She was perfect. Can I hold her? His voice cracked. Please, just once. Adaeze studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into the carrier and lifted the baby, cradling her with practiced ease. Giada stirred, but didn't wake, her small face scrunching adorably before settling back into sleep. If you try anything, Adaeze warned, if you run, if you signal anyone, I press a button on my phone and everything releases. The FBI will have you in custody within the hour. Understand? I understand. She stood and moved closer, close enough that Min-jun could smell the baby powder and formula and something uniquely his daughter. Then Adaeze placed Giada in his arms. The moment she settled against his chest, something inside Min-jun shattered. She was so small, so warm, so utterly vulnerable. She fit perfectly in his arms, like she'd always belonged there. Like she was the piece of himself he'd been missing his entire life. Her name means good daughter of the firstborn, Adaeze said quietly. In Igbo, Ada is the first daughter. In Korean, Ji means wisdom and purpose. I wanted her to carry both of us, both worlds, both legacies. Min-jun couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his eyes burning. Ada opened her eyes, those dark, knowing eyes, and looked directly at him. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, father and daughter, seeing each other for the first time, recognizing something fundamental and unchangeable. She has your intensity, Adaeze said. Even at 4 months, she studies everything, calculates, decides who's safe and who isn't. It terrifies me sometimes, knowing she has your mind. She has your heart, Min-jun whispered. I can see it. The way she looks at the world, it's not with suspicion. It's with curiosity. Hope. That's all you. They stood like that for 3 minutes. A stolen moment of what could have been. A family that existed only in this space, this time, before reality crashed back in. Then Adaeze gently took Giada back. The FBI is surrounding this park. They'll move in exactly 5 minutes. Jiwoo is already being arrested at his office. I made sure he'd be somewhere they could take him cleanly. Min-jun's blood ran cold. You already decided. The choice you gave me, it wasn't real. The choice was always real. You just made it without realizing. She settled Giada back into the carrier. You came here alone, unarmed, vulnerable. You held your daughter knowing you'd lose everything. That's the choice, Min-jun. You chose her over your empire. You chose love over power. Even if it was just for 3 minutes, you chose differently. And now I go to prison anyway. Now you go to prison and know you are capable of change. That your daughter will grow up knowing her father, in his final moment, chose to be good. Adaze's eyes glistened. That's more than most men in your world ever do. Min-jun heard sirens in the distance. Saw unmarked vehicles positioning at park exits. He had maybe 2 minutes before they closed in. I'm sorry, he said, for everything. For not trusting you, for throwing you away, for missing the first 4 months of her life. I'm sorry. I know you are. Adaeze's voice broke slightly. But sorry doesn't change what happens next. Will you tell her about me? The truth? I'll tell her you were complicated, dangerous, broken in ways you couldn't fix. But in the end, you loved her enough to let go. She stood, preparing to leave. That's the story she deserves. Not the monster, not the saint, just the truth. Adaeze. Goodbye, Min-jun. She lifted the carrier and walked away, her figure retreating across the park as federal agents in tactical gear materialized from cars, trees, buildings. Min-jun stood frozen, watching his daughter disappear into a future he'd never be part of. Then he raised his hands above his head. "Min-jun Choi!" a voice called from behind him. "FBI, you're under arrest!" The handcuffs clicked into place with terrible finality. As they led him to the waiting vehicle, Min-jun looked back one last time. Adaeze had stopped at the park's edge. She was watching him, the carrier in one hand, her phone in the other. Their eyes met across the distance, and at that moment, Min-jun understood. She hadn't just destroyed his empire, she'd given him something he'd never had, a reason to be better, even if it was too late. The federal holding facility in downtown Chicago smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Min-jun sat in an interrogation room, handcuffed to a metal table, staring at his reflection in the two-way mirror. He'd been here for 6 hours. No lawyer yet. He'd refused to call anyone. No questions yet. The FBI was building their case, letting him marinate in isolation. He welcomed the silence. It gave him time to think. The door opened. A woman in her 40s entered. African-American, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She carried a thick folder that Min-jun recognized immediately, Adaeze's dossier. "Mr. Choi, I'm Special Agent Denise Walker, Organized Crime Division." She sat across from him, spreading documents across the table with deliberate precision. "We've been building a case against your organization for 3 years, but, in the last 12 hours, we've received more actionable intelligence than we gathered in all that time combined. Care to guess from whom?" Min-jun said nothing. "Your ex-wife is quite thorough. Bank records, shipping manifests, communications logs, photographs. She's handed us everything we need to dismantle your entire operation." Walker leaned forward. "But here's what's interesting. She's also provided testimony that you didn't know about certain operations. That your cousin, Park Ji-woo, was running side businesses without your knowledge. Trafficking operations you'd explicitly forbidden." Min-jun's head snapped up. "What?" "According to Mrs. Okonkwo's testimony, Ji-woo has been running a human trafficking ring through your shipping routes. Young women from Southeast Asia, brought in through ports you control, but operations you never authorized." Walker pulled out photographs, grainy surveillance images of shipping containers, frightened faces, documents in Ji-woo's handwriting. "She says you would have shut it down if you'd known, that for all your crimes, you drew a line at trafficking." It was true. Min-jun's father had established that rule decades ago. No drugs, no trafficking, no children. Those were the boundaries that separated them from animals. But Ji-woo had crossed that line. "She's offering you a deal," Walker continued. "Full cooperation on Ji-woo's trafficking operation in exchange for reduced charges on your other activities. You'd still do time. Significant time, but we're talking 15 years instead of life. Possibility of parole in 10. "Why?" Min-jun's voice was hoarse. "Why would she help me?" She was very clear about that. She said, and I quote, "My daughter deserves to meet her father someday. Not in prison when she's 40, but when she's young enough for it to matter." Walker paused. "She also said you made a choice today. That you chose her over your empire. She wants to honor that choice." Min-jun's chest tightened. Even now, even after everything, Adaeze was thinking 10 moves ahead. She'd destroyed his empire, but left him a path back to his daughter. Not today, not next year, but someday. "There's one condition," Walker said. "You testify against Ji-woo. You provide evidence about the trafficking operation. Names, routes, everything. You help us save those women and put him away for the rest of his life. And if I refuse, then you both go down for everything. Life sentences, no parole. Your daughter grows up never knowing you." Walker closed the folder. Adaeze was clear about that too. "If you choose pride over redemption, she'll make sure Ji-ada knows exactly what kind of man you were. But if you choose to help, if you choose to do one good thing, she'll tell your daughter you tried to be better at the end." Min-jun thought about Ji-ada's face. Those ancient eyes staring up at him with pure trust. He thought about Ji-woo. Ambitious, ruthless, willing to traffic in human misery for profit. He thought about his father, who'd built an empire on strict codes and boundaries, and how Min-jun had let those boundaries erode. "I want immunity for my people," Min-jun said quietly. "Tae-yang, Kim Hae-won, everyone who worked under me. They were following orders. Ji-woo's trafficking operation was separate. They had nothing to do with it. We can discuss terms." "No discussion, that's the deal. I give you Ji-woo, you give me my people's freedom." Walker studied him for a long moment. "You know Adaeze said you'd do this. She said you'd try to protect them even now. She said it was the one decent part of you she couldn't destroy. your loyalty to the people who served you. She knows me better than anyone. She also said you'd be impossible to work with. Arrogant, controlling, convinced you're smarter than everyone in the room. Walker smiled slightly. But she said if we could get past that, you'd keep your word. That honor still meant something to you, even if it was warped by violence. Min-jun almost smiled. Even in destroying him, Adaeze had left instructions for putting him back together. I'll need to speak with my lawyer, he said. Already here. Adaeze arranged that too. Walker stood. She thought of everything, Mr. Choi. Every detail, every contingency. She played you, played Jiwoo, played all of us. But she left you this one chance. I suggest you take it. 3 hours later, Min-jun sat with his lawyer, not the high-priced criminal attorney he usually used, but a woman named Sarah Chen who specialized in cooperating witnesses and plea deals. Your ex-wife hired me, Sarah explained. She paid for a year of representation up front. She was very specific about the terms you should accept and which ones to fight. She's still controlling everything. She's trying to keep you alive and give you a future with your daughter. Sarah spread the plea agreement across the table. This is actually generous, considering the evidence against you. 15 years, eligibility for parole in 10, minimum security facility, and full immunity for your organization's members regarding any crimes not directly tied to trafficking. Jiwoo? Looking at multiple life sentences. The trafficking evidence is ironclad, and with your testimony, we can connect him to at least 47 victims over the past 2 years. Sarah's expression hardened. These are real people, Mr. Choi. Women who were promised legitimate work and ended up imprisoned, some as young as 16. If you help us save them, if you help us shut down that network, that's something. It's not redemption, but it's something. Min-jun read through the agreement, each page a nail in the coffin of his old life. There's a clause here about contact with Adaeze and the child, he noted. That was her addition. No contact while you're incarcerated. No letters, no calls, no attempts to locate them. She wants to raise Ji-ada without interference. Sarah softened slightly. But when you're released, if you've served your time fully and shown genuine rehabilitation, she's agreed to consider supervised visitation. No guarantees, but a possibility. 10 years minimum before I see my daughter again. Unless you reject the deal and go to trial. Then it's never. Min-jun signed the document with a hand that didn't shake. He signed away his empire, his freedom, his identity as Min-jun Choi, the crime boss. He signed toward the possibility, remote and uncertain, of being someone different, someone his daughter might not hate. 2 days later, Min-jun testified before a grand jury. He laid out Jiwoo's trafficking operation in exhaustive detail, the shipping routes through Long Beach and Seattle, the warehouses in Oakland where women were held, the falsified immigration documents, the network of corrupt officials who'd been paid to look the other way. He provided names, dates, bank accounts, everything. Jiwoo's lawyer tried to discredit him, called him a liar, a turncoat, a man trying to save himself by destroying his cousin. But the evidence was overwhelming. And when federal agents raided the warehouses Min-jun identified, they found 23 women imprisoned in conditions that made the news crews weep. The public narrative shifted. Min-jun Choi was still a criminal, still a monster in many ways. But he'd also helped save 23 lives. He'd drawn a line and enforced it, even at the cost of everything. On his last night before beginning his sentence, Min-jun was allowed one phone call from a monitored line. He called the number Adaeze had left with his lawyer. She answered on the 3rd ring. Min-jun, I signed everything. Testified against Jiwoo. Your people are safe. The deal is done. I know, I've been watching the news. Her voice was neutral, carefully controlled. You saved those women. That matters. It doesn't erase what I am. No, but it's a start. She paused. I'm taking Ji-ada to Canada next week. The job in Toronto is real. We're starting over somewhere. You can't touch us. I'm not trying to touch you. I'm trying to let you go. The silence that followed was heavy with everything they couldn't say. She smiled yesterday, Adaeze said finally, her voice softer. A real smile, not just gas. She was looking at sunflowers. I bought them for the apartment because they're my favorite, and she just lit up. Like she understood beauty already. Min-jun closed his eyes, imagining it. His daughter discovering joy in something simple and lovely. Take pictures, he said quietly. Even if you never show them to me, take pictures so she can remember being happy. I will. Adaze's voice thickened. Min-jun, what you did today, testifying, saving those women. That's the man I married. That's the man I thought you could be all along. It's 10 years too late. It's not too late for Adaeze. She'll grow up knowing her father made a choice, that he chose to help people instead of protecting himself. That's the story I'll tell her. Not the monster story. Not only the monster story. She took a shaky breath. I'll tell her the truth. All of it. The good man who made terrible choices. The terrible man who made one good choice. She deserves to understand both. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I destroyed your life, Min-jun. I used you, manipulated you, turned you against your own organization. I'm not a hero here. You're a mother protecting her child. That makes you exactly what you need to be. Another long pause. 10 years, Adaeze said finally. If you serve your full time, if you use those years to become someone different, someone better, I'll bring her to meet you. One visit. Supervised. That's all I can promise. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. Her voice hardened slightly, the steel returning. But if you waste those years, if you come out the same man you went in, if you try to reclaim any part of your old life, we disappear, permanently. New names, new country, new everything. You'll never find us. I understand. Good. She cleared her throat. I have to go. Adaeze needs to eat. Adaeze. Yes. Min-jun searched for words adequate to the moment, for something that could encompass regret, gratitude, love, loss, hope, and surrender, all at once. Be happy, he said finally. Both of you, that's all I want now. Just be happy. He heard her breath catch. Goodbye, Min-jun. The line went dead. Min-jun sat alone in the holding cell, the phone still pressed to his ear, listening to empty static. Tomorrow he'd be transferred to FCI Sandstone in Minnesota. Minimum security. Clean, quiet, isolated. 10 years minimum. Possibly 15 if parole was denied. 10 years to become someone worthy of his daughter's time. 10 years to prove Adaeze's faith wasn't misplaced. 10 years to learn how to be something other than Min-jun Choi, the crime boss. For the first time in his life, Min-jun Choi had a purpose that wasn't about power, or control, or empire. He had a daughter who might, someday, want to know him. And that was worth any price. Even this one. 9 years later, Min-jun stepped out of FCI Sandstone into Minnesota morning air that tasted like freedom and terror in equal measure. He was 42 years old. He'd entered prison at 33, still young enough to believe in second chances. Now, grey threaded through his hair, and the man who emerged was fundamentally different from the one who'd entered. He'd spent those 9 years, granted early parole for exemplary behavior, and continued cooperation with federal prosecutors, doing 3 things: learning, changing, and preparing to meet his daughter. Sarah Chen waited by a car in the parking lot, older now, but still sharp. She'd visited him quarterly throughout his sentence, updating him on legal matters, and occasionally, on Adaeze and Adaeze. Ready? She asked as he approached. Min-jun looked back at the facility one last time. 9 years of his life contained in those walls. 9 years of reading, studying, therapy sessions with Dr. Morrison, who'd slowly peeled back layers of trauma and violence to find something salvageable underneath. 9 years of waiting. Yes, he said. They drove in silence for several miles before Sarah spoke. Adaeze agreed to meet. Tomorrow afternoon, neutral location in St. Paul. 1 hour, supervised by me and a social worker. Adaeze knows about you. Adaeze told her the truth. Age-appropriate version. She knows her father made mistakes and paid for them. Does she want to meet me? She's curious, nervous. She's 9 years old, Min-jun. She's seen pictures, heard stories. But you're still abstract to her. Sarah glanced at him. Don't expect too much from this first meeting. Just be present. Be honest. Be the person you've worked to become. Min-jun nodded, his throat too tight for words. That night, in the modest apartment Sarah had arranged for him in downtown Minneapolis, Min-jun couldn't sleep. He sat at the small desk, looking at the photographs Adaeze had sent through Sarah over the years. Controlled communication, carefully filtered, but enough to watch Adaeze grow. 4 months old, sleeping in that yellow sunflower blanket. 1-year-old, taking her first steps, determination fierce on her tiny face. 3 years old, dressed as a princess for Halloween, her smile brilliant and gap-toothed. 6 years old, at her school's science fair, standing beside a volcano she'd built, her expression serious and focused. 8 years old, on a soccer field, mud-streaked and triumphant, holding a trophy. And the most recent, sent 3 months ago. 9 years old, sitting in a library, surrounded by books, her face reflecting the same intensity Min-jun saw in the mirror every day. She was brilliant. Even through photographs, he could see it. Adaeze's compassion combined with his analytical mind. A dangerous, beautiful combination. He'd missed everything. First words, first steps, first day of school, first heartbreak, first victory. 9 years of moments he could never reclaim. But tomorrow he'd get something he'd stopped believing in during the darkest prison nights. A beginning. The community center in St. Paul was neutral, safe, public. Large windows, comfortable chairs, a play area in the corner that Adaeze was probably too old for, but that someone had thoughtfully included anyway. Min-jun arrived 30 minutes early. He wore simple clothes, jeans, a button-down shirt, nothing flashy. He'd learned in prison that presence mattered more than presentation. Sarah was already there, along with a woman she introduced as Patricia Wells, the social worker assigned to supervise the visit. Ground rules, Patricia said kindly but firmly. 1 hour maximum. No physical contact unless Adaeze initiates it. Keep conversation age-appropriate. If at any point she becomes uncomfortable, we end the session immediately. This is about her comfort and safety, not your needs. I understand. Mr. Choi, I've read your file. Your cooperation with federal prosecutors, your rehabilitation efforts, the work you've done in prison, it's impressive. But impressive doesn't erase the past. Your daughter has been raised in a loving, stable environment without you. This meeting is a gift, not a right. Remember that. I will. They waited. Min-jun's hands trembled slightly. He clasped them together, forcing steadiness. At 2:03 p.m., the door opened. Adaeze entered first, and Min-jun's breath caught. She was 36 now, still beautiful, but weathered by single parenthood and the weight of the secrets she carried. She wore her hair natural, close-cropped, and her clothes were practical. Jeans and a sweater that looked worn and comfortable. She looked like someone who'd built a real life from ashes. Her eyes met his across the room, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. 9 years of silence, loss, and transformation hanging between them. Then she stepped aside, and Adaeze walked in. Min-jun's heart stopped. She was small for 9, delicate-boned like her mother, but with his posture, straight-backed, observant, assessing the room before committing to it. Her skin was warm brown, her hair pulled back in 2 puffs that framed her face. She wore a blue dress with white flowers and sneakers that had seen heavy use. But it was her eyes that destroyed him. His eyes. Dark, intelligent, ancient beyond their years. Staring at him with the same calculating intensity he'd once used to evaluate threats. But without the cruelty, without the coldness, just curiosity and carefully controlled fear. Adaeze, Adaeze said softly, her hand on their daughter's shoulder. This is Min-jun, your father. Adaeze studied him silently for a long moment. Then she said in a voice that was pure music, You look different than your pictures. Min-jun smiled, the expression feeling strange on his face after 9 years of prison-taught neutrality. Older? Sadder. She walked closer, stopping at a safe distance, her mother's daughter through and through. Mama said you did bad things, that you hurt people. I did. Min-jun didn't look away from her gaze. I hurt a lot of people, including your mother. I made choices I can never take back. Did you hurt kids? The question was sharp, direct. Adaeze shifted uncomfortably, but Min-jun met it head-on. Not directly, but some of the things I did, the businesses I ran, the people I worked with, they hurt communities, families. Children lived in those communities. So yes, indirectly, I hurt kids. Adaeze absorbed this, processing. But you stopped the bad man. Uncle Jiwoo, Mama told me you helped save people he was hurting. I did, but that doesn't erase what I did before. I know. She tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle. Mama says people can change, that they can be bad, and then choose to be better. Are you better now? Min-jun glanced at Adaeze, who watched him with an unreadable expression. I'm trying to be, he said carefully. Every day I try to be better than I was. Some days I succeed. Some days I fail. But I keep trying. Why? The question was simple, devastating. Because you deserve a father who's better than I was. Even if I can never be good enough, even if I can never fix what I broke, you deserve to know I tried. His voice cracked slightly. You deserve to know you mattered enough to change me. Adaeze was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Then she walked to the chair beside Min-jun and sat down, keeping careful distance, but choosing proximity over separation. Tell me about prison, she said. Was it scary? They talked for 53 minutes. Giada asked questions, some childish, some devastatingly perceptive. About prison, about his childhood, about why he'd made the choices he'd made. She asked about his favorite color. She didn't believe him when he said yellow until Adaeze confirmed it, a detail from their marriage. His favorite food, gamjatang, which Giada had never tried. What he missed most about freedom, mornings, quiet mornings without noise. Min-jun answered everything honestly, filtering details for age appropriateness, but never lying. Adaeze watched from across the room, her expression, cycling through emotions Min-jun couldn't fully read. Pain, pride, fear, relief, regret. Patricia took notes, her presence forgotten, as father and daughter navigated this first fragile connection. I play soccer, Giada said at one point. I'm midfielder. Coach says I'm good at seeing the whole field, not just where the ball is. Strategic thinking, Min-jun said. That's valuable. Mama says I get that from you, the way I see patterns. Giada's voice dropped slightly. Sometimes I see patterns in people, how they're going to act before they do it. It scares Mama sometimes. Min-jun glanced at Adaeze, saw the tension in her shoulders. It scared your mother when I did it too, he said quietly. But it's not bad, Giada. It's a gift. You just have to learn to use it for good things. To protect people, not manipulate them. To understand them, not control them. How do you know the difference? You ask yourself one question before you act. Am I doing this because it helps them, or because it helps me? He paused. I spent most of my life getting that answer wrong. But you don't have to. You have your mother to teach you compassion. That's what makes all the difference. Giada looked at him with those ancient eyes, and Min-jun saw her making calculations, forming opinions, deciding who he was in her world. Can I ask you something hard? She said. Yes. Do you love me? The room went silent. Adaeze's hand covered her mouth. Patricia stopped writing. Sarah looked away. Min-jun leaned forward slightly, holding his daughter's gaze. I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life, he said, his voice raw with truth. I loved you before I met you. I loved you when I held you for 3 minutes before I was arrested. I loved you every day I was in prison, even though you didn't know me. I love you now, sitting here, even though I have no right to. And I'll love you every day for the rest of my life, whether I see you again or not. Giada's eyes glistened. Mama says love means doing what's best for people, even when it hurts you. Your mama is right. Then you do love me. Because you went to prison, so Uncle Jiwoo wouldn't hurt anyone else. That hurt you, but it was best for other people. That's love. Min-jun's vision blurred. He nodded, unable to speak. Giada stood, moving toward her mother. I think I'm done for today. Adaeze wrapped an arm around her, protective and proud. Okay, baby. But Giada turned back at the door. Can we do this again? Maybe in a few months? Min-jun looked at Adaeze, who studied her daughter with a mixture of surprise and something that might have been hope. We'll see, Adaeze said carefully. If Mr. Min-jun continues doing well, if he stays on his path, then yes, we can do this again. Good. Giada smiled. A small, tentative smile, but genuine. Because I have more questions. Then they were gone, the door closing with quiet finality. Min-jun sat frozen in the chair, his chest heaving with suppressed emotion. That went better than expected, Patricia said gently. She's processing. That's healthy. The fact that she wants to see you again is significant. She's extraordinary, Min-jun whispered. She is, Sarah agreed. And she's her mother's daughter. Strong, smart, careful. But she's also yours. I saw the way she analyzed you, tested you, looked for truth beneath words. She has your mind, Min-jun. Adaeze has just raised her to use it differently. Min-jun stood on shaking legs. What happens now? Now you continue your parole requirements. Weekly check-ins, therapy sessions, employment. You build a life that's stable and legitimate. And in 6 months, if all goes well, we request another visit. Patricia gathered her notes. This is a marathon, Mr. Choi, not a sprint. Don't expect instant connection. Earn it gradually, honestly, one conversation at a time. That evening, Min-jun received a text from an unknown number. He opened it, knowing already who it was from. She asked me about you all the way home. What you were like when I met you. Why I married you. Whether I thought you really changed. Min-jun typed. What did you tell her? The truth. That you were dangerous and brilliant and broken. That you made me feel safe and terrified at the same time. That I loved you in spite of my better judgment. A pause then. And that people can change if they want it badly enough. That 9 years in prison doesn't erase the past, but it's a start. Thank you for bringing her, for giving me this chance. I didn't do it for you. I did it for her. She deserves to know where she comes from, good and bad. She deserves to decide for herself who you are. I understand. Several minutes passed before another message came. You looked good today. Calm. Present. Like you'd found something in prison that you'd lost before. Peace, maybe. Or just exhaustion. Either way, it suited you. Min-jun stared at the message, reading between the lines. Adaeze had watched him carefully today, assessed him the way she once had across that charity gala ballroom, when she'd seen through him completely. She was deciding if he was safe, if he could be trusted, if he'd truly changed. I'm not the same man you married, he typed. Or the same man you destroyed. I don't know who I am yet, but I'm trying to be someone Adaeze doesn't have to fear. Keep trying. She's watching you too, you know, making calculations, deciding if you're worth knowing. And what's her verdict? Undecided, but leaning cautiously optimistic, which, from a 9-year-old who inherited both our trust issues, is practically glowing praise. Min-jun smiled, despite everything. I won't let her down. See that you don't, because if you do, there's no third chance. We disappear, and you never find us. I meant that 9 years ago, and I mean it now. I know, and Adaeze. Yes? Thank you, for everything. For keeping her safe, for raising her right, for being the parent she needed when I couldn't be. The response took a long time. You're welcome. Now go build a life worth inviting her into. She deserves a father, Min-jun. Try to become one. The conversation ended. Min-jun sat in his small apartment, looking out at Minneapolis lights, holding his phone like it was something precious. He'd spent 9 years preparing for this. Now he had the rest of his life to prove he deserved it. His daughter, brilliant, careful, kind, was watching. And for the first time since that phone call 9 years ago, Min-jun Choi had something more valuable than an empire. He had hope. 3 years later. Min-jun stood outside Lincoln Elementary School in Toronto, watching children pour through the doors like a living river of noise and color. It was May, the afternoon warm with the promise of summer, and he'd been standing here for 20 minutes, nervous in a way that 9 years of prison and 3 years of parole couldn't compare to. He was meeting Adaeze, not in a supervised community center, not with social workers and lawyers mediating every word, just them. Father and daughter, for an afternoon. Adaeze had called him 3 weeks ago with the offer. She's 12 now. She's been asking to spend time with you alone, without me hovering, without supervision. Her voice had been careful, measured. I've thought about it, talked to her therapist about it, and I've decided I trust you. Not completely, not blindly, but enough. Enough for what? Min-jun had asked, his heart hammering. Enough to let her decide how much space you get in her life. She's old enough now to make that choice, to understand consequences and boundaries. Adaeze had paused. You've done the work, Min-jun. 3 years out of prison, steady job, therapy every week, no violations. You've rebuilt yourself from nothing. That matters. It doesn't erase. No, it doesn't. But it's something. And it's enough for this. Now, watching the school doors, Min-jun saw her. Adaeze at 12 was all legs and angles, growing into her features, but still carrying that watchful intensity. She wore jeans and a Hamilton hoodie, her natural hair pulled back in a high puff. She walked with her friends, a diverse group, laughing about something on one girl's phone. But her eyes scanned the pickup area with practiced caution. Their eyes met. She said something to her friends, who looked over curiously. Then she broke away, walking toward him with measured steps. Hi, she said when she reached him. Hi. Min-jun smiled, the expression coming easier now after 3 years of practice. How was school? Long. Mr. Patterson assigned a 15-page research paper on civil rights movements, due in 3 weeks. She adjusted her backpack. I'm doing mine on the intersection of Korean immigrant experiences and the Black civil rights movement in 1960s Chicago. Mama said you might know something about that. Your grandfather, my father, came to Chicago in 1963. He talked about how Black community leaders helped Korean immigrants navigate discrimination. Min-jun gestured toward his car, a modest Honda, nothing flashy. I brought some of his old papers, thought you might want to see them. Adaeze's face lit up with genuine interest. Really, that would be perfect. They drove to a nearby park, the conversation flowing easier than it ever had before. Over the past 3 years, they'd progressed from supervised visits to phone calls to video chats, where Adaeze would tell him about school projects, friend drama, soccer tournaments. Each conversation building trust slowly, carefully. But this was different. This was real time, real space, without Adaeze's protective presence. At the park, they spread out on a bench near the lake. Min-jun pulled out the folder he'd carefully assembled. Photocopies of his father's immigration papers, photographs, a journal written in Korean that Min-jun had partially translated. Your grandfather wrote this when he first arrived, Min-jun explained, pointing to faded pages. He talks about how Korean immigrants and Black Americans both faced discrimination, but also how they sometimes competed for the same resources. It was complicated. Like you and Mama, Adaeze said quietly. Min-jun looked up, surprised. What do you mean? You came from different worlds, different cultures. There was probably tension. Your family probably didn't approve. Her family probably worried. But you loved each other anyway. Adaeze's expression was thoughtful, mature beyond her years. And then you destroyed it because you couldn't trust it. Because you were too damaged to believe something good could last. The observation was so precise, so devastating, that Min-jun couldn't immediately respond. Your therapist teach you that? He finally asked. I have my own therapist. Dr. Kim. She helps me process having a father who was in prison. Adaeze said it matter-of-factly, without accusation. She says I can love you and be angry at you at the same time. That both things are true. Are you angry at me? Adaeze looked out at the lake, watching ducks glide across the surface. Sometimes. When I see my friends with their dads at games, at concerts, at normal things, I get angry that you weren't there. That you made choices that took you away from me before I even knew you. I'm sorry. I know you are. You've said it a lot over 3 years. She turned to face him. But Dr. Kim says sorry is just words. What matters is whether you changed your behavior, whether you're different now. And what do you think? Am I different? Adaeze studied him with those ancient eyes. His eyes, but warmer, more open than his had ever been. You're quieter than I expected. When Mama first told me about you, I imagined this big, scary person. Someone who took up all the space in a room. But you're not like that. You listen more than you talk. You ask questions instead of giving orders. She paused. You're gentle. I didn't expect that. Prison teaches you to be careful, to think before acting, to understand that violence, even verbal violence, has consequences. Min-jun looked down at his hands. I spent 9 years learning to be quiet, to listen, to exist without dominating. Do you miss it? Your old life? The question surprised him with its directness. Sometimes I miss the certainty, he admitted. The power. Knowing I could control outcomes, force solutions. But then I remember what that certainty cost. Your mother's trust, our marriage, 9 years of your life. And I realize I don't miss it as much as I thought. He met her eyes. What I missed most was this. Sitting with you. Being allowed into your world. Even just at the edges. Adaeze smiled. A genuine warm smile that Adaeze smiled. A genuine warm smile that transformed her serious face into something luminous. You're kind of corny, you know that? Min-jun laughed, the sound rusty but real. Your mother used to say the same thing. Said I was secretly sentimental under all the cold businessman exterior. She still talks about you sometimes. Not a lot, but sometimes. Adaeze pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. She told me that before everything fell apart, you used to make her tea every morning. That you learned how to make it exactly the way she liked. Strong, with milk and honey, even though you only drink coffee. I remember. The memory was bittersweet, painful in its simplicity. It was the one thing I could do that wasn't about control or strategy, just care. Do you still love her? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Min-jun considered lying, deflecting, protecting Adaeze from complicated truths. But she'd asked for honesty, and she deserved it. I'll always love her, he said quietly. Not in a way that demands anything from her. She's moved on, built a beautiful life for you both. But the love doesn't just disappear. It transforms into something else. Gratitude, maybe. Respect. Regret for what I destroyed. But appreciation for what she built from the ruins. She hasn't dated anyone, you know. Not once in 12 years. Adaeze's voice was thoughtful. I asked her about it once, why she didn't try to find someone else. She said she was too busy raising me, building her career. But I think it's because she's still healing from what you did to her. The words cut deep, as they were meant to. I broke something in her that can't be fixed, Min-jun acknowledged. The ability to fully trust. To believe that someone won't destroy her the moment things get difficult. That's on me. That's my legacy. But you saved those women, the ones Uncle Jiwoo was trafficking. You went to prison to stop him. Adaeze turned to face him fully. Mama says that matters. That even broken people can do good things. That you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. Is that what you believe? I'm 12. I don't know what I believe yet. She smiled slightly. But I know I don't hate you. I know I want to keep knowing you. And I know that when I think about my father, I don't just think about the bad things anymore. I also think about this. You showing up, being patient, letting me decide the pace. Min-jun felt his throat tighten with emotion. That means everything to me. I know it does. I can tell. Adaeze glanced at her phone. Mama will be here to pick me up in 20 minutes. But before she gets here, I want to tell you something. What is it? Next month, I have a soccer tournament. Regional finals. Mama said I could invite you if I wanted to. She took a breath. I want to. I want you to come watch me play. Not sitting with Mama. She'll be with the other parents. But there. In the stands. Watching. Min-jun's vision blurred. I would be honored. I'm number 7, midfielder. I'm pretty good. We're favored to win. Pride crept into her voice. Coach says I read the game better than anyone he's coached. Says I see patterns other players miss. You get that from both of us. Your mother sees people's hearts. I see their strategies. You combine both. You see how people move. And why? Min-jun smiled. That makes you dangerous on the field. And off it, Adaeze added with a grin that was pure mischief. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the lake, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. A car pulled into the parking lot, Adaze's modest sedan. Adaeze gathered her backpack and the folder of documents. Same time next month? Before the tournament? Absolutely. She stood, then hesitated. Can I hug you? Min-jun's heart stopped. In 3 years of visits, Adaeze had never initiated physical contact. She'd maintained careful distance, professional handshakes when appropriate, but never more. Of course, he managed. Adaeze stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, a quick, almost businesslike embrace, but genuine. She was small still, her head barely reaching his chest, and she smelled like school cafeteria food and strawberry shampoo. For 3 seconds, Min-jun held his daughter. Then she pulled back, already moving toward her mother's car. See you next month, she called over her shoulder. Min-jun watched her go, his hands trembling. Adaeze got out of the car as Adaeze approached, and for a moment the 2 women in his life stood together. Adaeze said something that made Adaeze laugh, then climbed into the passenger seat. Adaeze looked across the parking lot at Min-jun. Their eyes met. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just looked at him for a long moment, assessing, considering, remembering. Then she nodded. Once. A simple acknowledgement. You did good today. Keep going. She's worth it. Min-jun nodded back. Adaeze returned to the car and drove away, taking their daughter with her. 1 month later. The soccer field was chaos, parents screaming encouragement, coaches barking instructions, 12-year-old girls playing with intensity that rivaled professional athletes. Min-jun sat in the middle section of the bleachers, wearing a simple jacket and jeans, trying to be invisible. But when Adaeze took the field in her number 7 jersey, he couldn't stop watching. She was magnificent. Quick, strategic, always 3 moves ahead. She didn't force plays. She created space, anticipated movement, set up her teammates for success. It was beautiful to watch, this combination of her mother's collaborative spirit and his tactical mind. In the 40th minute, Adaeze stole the ball from an opponent, dribbled past 2 defenders with elegant efficiency, and passed to her striker at the perfect moment. Goal. The crowd erupted. Adaze's team mobbed her, celebrating, but she broke away from them and looked up into the stands, looking for him. When their eyes met, she smiled. Brilliant, proud, young, and raised one hand in a small wave. Min-jun waved back, his chest so full of pride and love, it physically hurt. After the game, which Adaeze's team won 3-1, she ran over to where he waited by the fence. Did you see? She was breathless, sweaty, radiant. Did you see that assist? I saw everything. You were incredible. Min-jun wished he could hug her, lift her up, celebrate properly. But they weren't there yet. So he settled for words. Your vision, your patience. You controlled that game, Adaeze. That was masterful. Coach said I played the best game of my season. She was bouncing on her toes, adrenaline still coursing through her. Mama's taking me for pizza to celebrate. Do you want to come? Min-jun glanced past her to where Adaeze stood with other parents, laughing about something. As if sensing his gaze, she looked over. Their eyes met. Adaeze said something to the parents, then walked toward them. She looked good. Tired from a long day at work before the game, but happy, proud of their daughter. She wore her Toronto Refugee Law Center jacket over jeans, her hair now growing out into short locks. Nice game, baby, she said to Adaeze, pulling her into a side hug. That assist was perfection. Can Min-jun come to pizza with us? Adaeze asked immediately. Please. He drove all the way from Minneapolis for the game. Adaeze looked at Min-jun, her expression unreadable. 12 years. 12 years since he'd thrown her out in the rain. 12 years since she'd disappeared, pregnant and broken. 12 years of rage, revenge, redemption, and slow, painful rebuilding. One condition, Adaeze said finally. What's that? Min-jun asked. You sit next to Adaeze, not me. This isn't about us. It's about her. Adaeze's voice was firm, but not unkind. We're not friends, Min-jun. We're not reconciling. We're co-parenting at a distance. And that's all this is. I understand. Good. She looked at Adaeze. Go get changed. We'll meet you at the car. Adaeze jogged off toward the locker rooms, leaving them alone by the fence. Thank you, Min-jun said quietly. For letting me come. For letting me be part of this. I didn't do it for you. I did it for her. She asked, and she's earned the right to make choices about who's in her life. Adaeze crossed her arms, defensive, but not hostile. But don't mistake this for forgiveness. I haven't forgiven you. I don't know if I ever will. I don't expect you to. Good. She studied him. You look healthy, different than you did 3 years ago. More settled. I'm trying. Daily therapy, steady work at the community center, building a life that's honest and small, and nothing like before. Min-jun met her eyes. I know I can never fix what I broke between us, but I'm trying to be someone Adaeze doesn't have to be ashamed of. She's not ashamed of you. She's cautious, but not ashamed. Adaeze's expression softened slightly. She talks about you more than I expected. Asks me questions about what you were like before, whether I think people can really change. She's processing, trying to reconcile the father she's building a relationship with and the man who destroyed her mother. What do you tell her? The truth. That you were capable of great love and great cruelty. That you're trying to be better now, but that doesn't erase the past. That she gets to decide for herself what kind of relationship she wants with you. Adaeze looked toward the locker rooms. She's smart, Min-jun. Smarter than both of us. She'll figure out who you really are. Make sure who you really are is worth knowing. I will. Adaeze emerged from the locker room, fresh-faced and hungry, her soccer bag slung over her shoulder. Ready, she announced. They went to a local pizza place. Nothing fancy. Adaeze sat between them in the booth, creating a buffer, keeping the peace. She talked non-stop about the game, about school, about a science project she was working on, about genetic inheritance patterns. Every few minutes she'd pull both of them into the conversation, asking Min-jun about his work, asking Adaeze about a case she was handling, weaving them together through her presence. She was good at it. Too good. You're manipulating us, Adaeze said at one point, amused. Is it working? Adaeze asked innocently. Too well, Min-jun admitted. They stayed for 2 hours. By the end, some of the tension had eased. Not disappeared. That would take years. Maybe forever. But eased enough that when they said goodbye in the parking lot, it felt less like a battlefield and more like a truce. Next month? Adaeze asked Min-jun hopefully. Same time? I'll be here. She hugged him again. Longer this time. More comfortable. Then she turned to Adaeze. Thanks for letting him come, Mama. You're welcome, baby. They drove away, and Min-jun stood alone in the parking lot, the evening air cool against his face. His phone buzzed. A text from Adaeze. She's happy you came. That matters more than my feelings about you. So, thank you for showing up. For being consistent. For trying. Min-jun stared at the message, reading it 3 times. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. It was enough. 2 years later. Giada stood in the kitchen of Min-jun's small Minneapolis apartment, helping him make gamjatang for dinner. She was 14 now, taller, more confident, sharp-tongued and brilliant. She visited once a month, sometimes staying the weekend, sometimes just for an afternoon. Adaeze had slowly relaxed the boundaries as trust built, as Min-jun proved himself reliable, present, changed. "You're cutting those wrong," Giada said, pointing at the potatoes. "They need to be bigger. Mama showed me how she used to watch you make this. Your mother watched me cook exactly once and apparently memorized everything I did wrong," Min-jun said dryly. "She says you were terrible at cooking, but tried anyway because you knew it mattered to her." Giada took over the cutting. "She says that's one of the things she loved about you. You were terrible at domestic things but tried anyway." "Past tense," Min-jun noted. "Well, yeah, she's not in love with you anymore." Giada said it casually, without cruelty. "But she doesn't hate you either. She told me last week that she's glad you changed, that it makes the story less tragic." "What story?" "Our story, the family that fell apart, and slowly, carefully, found a way to exist together. Not the same as before, but something." Giada looked up at him. "She's proud of you, I think. She won't say it directly, but I can tell." Min-jun's throat tightened. "That means more than you know." "I know, that's why I told you." Giada grinned. "I'm manipulative like that. I get it from both of you." They cooked together, the apartment filling with the smell of pork and spices, and something that felt remarkably like home. After dinner, Giada pulled out her laptop. "I need to show you something." "What is it?" "My college essay. I'm applying early to Georgetown, their School of Foreign Service. I want to study international relations and human rights law." She pulled up a document. "I wrote about you. And Mama. And what I learned from watching both of you." Min-jun read the essay slowly, carefully. It was titled Redemption Through Action, What My Parents Taught Me About Justice. It detailed Adaeze's work as a refugee attorney, her dedication to protecting vulnerable people. It discussed Min-jun's past, his crimes, but also his cooperation in stopping human trafficking, his 9 years in prison, his transformation. But mostly it talked about Giada's own understanding of justice, not as punishment or revenge, but as the hard work of rebuilding, healing, choosing every day to be better. It was sophisticated, nuanced, heartbreaking. It was perfect. "This is extraordinary," Min-jun said when he finished. "You've taken our worst moments and found meaning in them. Because there is meaning. You and Mama taught me that people are complicated, that someone can do terrible things and still be worth saving, that love means holding people accountable while still believing they can change." Giada saved the document. "I'm sending it to Mama tomorrow. I wanted you to see it first." "Why?" "Because you're part of my story. A big part. And I wanted you to know that I'm not ashamed of where I come from, either side." She looked at him steadily. "I'm proud to be your daughter, Min-jun. Even with everything. Because you didn't stay the monster. You chose to be something else. That takes more courage than people realize." Min-jun couldn't speak. He pulled his daughter into a hug. Easy now. Natural after 2 years of building trust. "I love you," he whispered. "More than I thought I could love anything." "I know. I love you too." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Now stop being sappy and help me with calculus homework. Mama says you were good at math." "I was exceptional at math." "Prove it." They spent the rest of the evening working through equations, Giada teaching him as much as he taught her, their laughter filling the small apartment with warmth and life. Present day. Min-jun Choi was 47 years old. He worked as a counselor at a community center, helping formerly incarcerated people reintegrate into society. He lived simply. Small apartment, modest car, quiet life. He attended therapy weekly, stayed in contact with his parole officer even though his parole had ended, and built a life defined by service instead of power. Every month, he saw his daughter. Every month, she taught him something new about grace, forgiveness, and the long, difficult work of being human. And twice a year, on Giada's birthday and on Christmas, he received a card from Adaeze. They were simple cards, no personal messages, just, "Thank you for being present. It matters." It wasn't love, it wasn't friendship, but it was recognition. It was peace. Today, Min-jun sat in the bleachers at Giada's high school graduation, watching his daughter, brilliant, beautiful, destined for greatness, accept her diploma. Adaeze sat 3 rows ahead with her mother, who'd flown in from Lagos for the occasion, They'd exchanged polite nods when Min-jun arrived, maintaining the careful boundaries they'd built over years. When Adaeze's name was called, she walked across that stage with her head high, her smile bright. She'd survived, thrived, built a life from the ruins of her parents' destruction, and when she received her diploma, she looked up into the stands. Not at her mother, not at her grandmother, at Min-jun. And she smiled, a smile that said, "We made it. Against everything, we made it." Min-jun smiled back, tears streaming down his face. He'd lost everything 14 years ago. Empire, freedom, the woman he loved. But he'd gained something immeasurably more valuable. A daughter who believed he could change. A daughter who proved redemption was possible. A daughter who taught him that love wasn't about possession or control. It was about showing up, being present, choosing every single day to be worthy of the gift you'd been given. After the ceremony, Adaeze found him in the crowd. "You came. I'll always come, as long as you want me here." "Good, because I need you to meet someone." She grabbed his hand and pulled him through the throng of celebrating families. Adaeze stood near the exit, her mother beside her, both of them radiant with pride. "Mama, Grandma," Adaeze said, pulling Min-jun forward. "I want a picture. All of us." Adaeze's eyes widened slightly. "Adaeze, please, just one. I graduate high school once." Adaeze's expression was determined. "I want to remember that everyone who made me who I am was here. Everyone." Adaeze looked at Min-jun. He looked back. 14 years of history hung between them, destruction and revenge, and slow, painful rebuilding. "One picture," Adaeze agreed quietly. They arranged themselves, Adaeze in the center, Adaeze on one side, Min-jun on the other, Grandma Okonkwo at the end. A stranger offered to take the photo. "Say freedom!" Adaeze called out. "Freedom!" they chorused. The camera clicked. One moment, captured forever. A family that had been shattered and reformed into something new. Not the same as before. Not perfect, but real. And as Min-jun stood there, his daughter's hand in his, Adaeze's presence steady beside them, he realized something profound. He'd spent his life trying to build an empire. But this fragile, hard-won, imperfect family, was the only kingdom that mattered. And for the first time in 47 years, Min-jun Choi was home. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's forcing someone to become worthy of redemption. Sometimes the greatest love isn't staying. It's leaving, and then slowly, carefully, showing someone the path back. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning. It's surviving, healing, and building something beautiful from ashes. This is their story. Imperfect, painful, real. And somehow, against everything, filled with hope. If you stayed until the end, thank you. That means this story met you somewhere personal. If you'd like to keep walking through stories like this with us, you're welcome to subscribe. If this story moved you, a like quietly helps it travel to another heart. And if someone you know would feel this story too, feel free to share it. I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. No matter where you are in the world, you're part of this space. And before you go, I pray peace finds you, protection surrounds you, and ease enters every area of your life. May your heart be strong, your worries light, and your path guided. Thank you for being here.